Okay, folks, welcome to the week ahead commentary. So tomorrow being Monday is game day. It is the website relaunch. There is the potential for a glitch. I did find something that I wasn't satisfied with. It's important to me to have it adjusted prior to the launch. And if there's an issue with them fixing it, which I don't believe there is, it should be a pretty simple fix. Then we might have to push until Tuesday. I don't think that's going to be the case. I do believe that tomorrow will be the relaunch of the website. In terms of functionality, it's actionable versus perfect, right? What I want to do is not wait as I have been to make sure that everything is perfect. I just want to make sure everything is actionable. For instance, the opt-in for the 5 most powerful candlestick patterns, that's not up and running yet. It won't be until mid next week because I have to have a separate developer come in and set that up. So let's do a quick tour. I'll skip the front end pages and we'll go to the back end pages, which is really what you'll be concerned with. And here's your dashboard. Hopefully I have all this stuff updated by tomorrow morning. And you can see here that I have a bunch of trades in here. I want to thank a bunch of you folks, particularly Norris, for helping out with the testing of the communications, particularly text. There is an issue with texting. It does work. However, it is delayed, and it's not the fault of myself or the developers. It is an issue with the vendor that we chose, and I need to find a new vendor for text. I'm keeping it in place right now. Just be forewarned that it is a delayed message, but you will be able to get push notification as well as an email. And unlike in the past where you had to wait for me to update the current trades list, it's done automatically. That's the way I had it designed, and it's really one of the major reasons why it's taken so long. I wanted the user, the member, to be able to select how they want it to be communicated with. Now, to manage your notifications, how you want to be communicated with, you just go to the dashboard, and this should be obviously enabled, and you just select what you want: email, text, push notification, only 1, only 2, 3, your choice. Save. Now, the key with my notification, folks, is that you need to come up here to my membership and make sure that your telephone number has the country code in front of it. All right, so if you're in the United States, which most are, you use a 1. And that was an issue that took us about a day to figure out, that we needed the country code versus just using a area code. I shouldn't say us. I should say me. It took me a while. That was on me. And obviously we have the forum. And if you have feedback on the channel, negative, positive, it's all good. Please use the website feedback. If there are glitches that you encounter, just please start a new topic, and I will pass that information along to the developers, and we'll get it fixed as quickly as possible. Here you can go to see what trade alerts have been issued, the stocks that we're watching, recent alerts, and past trades. Over here, when you first log in, you'll get prompted to take a tour. You can always close that out. If you want it to restart again, just come up here and it will restart for you. Just click on the I. And that's pretty much it. So it will be a far more user-friendly platform. Are there still some glitches? Yes, but it's actionable versus perfect. If I waited for perfect, we would never launch. And please, your feedback is so valuable to me. The only reason why I was able to have a product that I would be willing to put my name on is because of feedback from you and, of course, your help in testing. So please, your feedback is so very appreciated. I can't put words to it. So please use the forum to provide your feedback. All right, let's get to the charts. So let's kick things off with the 10-year yield. Weekly chart. A down week last week. We were up, but we reversed the close lower on the week. I think we're coming down here to around the 2.60 level. The Stokes here are looking ominous in that we are probably setting up for a higher low. And I think that in the coming months, the chart of the 10-year yield is implying that we may just get higher yields despite the rhetoric out of the Federal Reserve. Because remember, they can control short-term rates fairly easily, but once you start getting out further, 10-year, 30-year bond yields, it becomes more difficult. And it's this chart here which is allowing the stock market to move higher. Not to mention the hope that is a trade deal with the Chinese. Junk bonds continued higher. A lot of rhetoric getting passed around nowadays about the quality of high-yield debt. If in fact rates were normalized, the concern would be that many of the corporations out there would be at junk status and would not be able to service their debt. And that's kind of consistent with the U.S. government, right? That's why they need to keep yields low, because if rates were to normalize, think about the payments on interest only on an annualized basis, just to service our debt at $22 trillion. It's crazy. The tips. A continuation move higher last week. We are very close to a breakout here. Volume, though, dropping off. We need to watch this. The VIX, a major breakdown last week. And it appears as though we are going to move lower. And the S&P 500, which trades inversely of the VIX, obviously, will probably move higher. We'll go to that chart in a moment. And I'm not going to be the least bit surprised to see a 12 handle on the VIX, perhaps this week. The U.S. dollar, a down week last week, unable to hold the breakout from the prior week. So we have a breakout point failure on the dollar with a lot of topping action and a lot of resistance above. So I think that we're pulling back here. So I guess this is a good point to segue into my thoughts on what's going to happen with the dollar and what's going to happen with the stock market. There are a lot of bets out there that there will be a trade deal. You've had President Trump come out, along with some high-level officials out of China, talking up a trade deal. You're normally not going to get that type of high-level optimism on both sides of the table, unless, of course, there's a deal that's going to ultimately be signed by both parties. So I think what we could be setting up for here is a sell the news event. There's a lot of optimism in the markets building up this trade deal, and there's only one direction to go after that trade deal is had, and it's to the downside. This is not a cheap market. Earnings this past earnings season were mixed at best, and technically there's been a lot of damage done to this market. So while the knee-jerk reaction could quite possibly be to the upside, I don't think it's going to last. I think we're going to get a pullback on this market, and frankly, I don't think that I'm a genius for making that statement. I think that once we get to the S&P 500, you'll see what I mean, that we are due for a pause and a pullback. So the dollar, to finish off here, broke down below support last week, so I would expect lower lows on the dollar. The Dow Transports, weekly chart, another up week. We did flash some topping action here at resistance. A lot of resistance above here. Volume, very, very light last week. So a warning flag is on the track here for the transports. The Dow Jones, a good week last week in terms of price action. A new weekly high. We closed out the week right at the highs of the week, above 26,000. But when you take a look at the volume, I mean, it was horrible. Horrible volume last week. So this is not institutional demand. It appears as though these are computers that are keeping this market in check. So the Dow looking good, but absent is institutional demand. the NASDAQ composite. A very good week last week. Again, we closed out the week at the highs of the week. We have the second consecutive week above the 50-period moving average in blue. But as we look at the quality of volume last week, it was not good. It was very, very light volume. Now, I could see the NASDAQ composite moving up here to resistance at 74.86. The S&P 500 broke out last week. This is one of the reasons why I didn't want to stay short. Now, I will say this. Where we closed out the week last week, we have another resistance level right there. Right at the 2,800 level. We closed out the week at 27.92. And then above that level, 28.15. So while I think we're going to put in a new weekly high this week, because the probability is very high. And why is that probability very high? It's because we closed out the week at the highs of the week. The path of least resistance, in all probability, the path of least resistance remains to the upside, but volume. Again, here's the theme of the week. There's always a theme, and that theme is that we're being pushed up and through resistance levels on very light volume. And when I mentioned earlier that it doesn't take a genius to make the statement that, yeah, we're due for a pullback, well, look at this chart, right? We haven't had a respectable pullback since December. It's been a straight shot higher. So again, really no earth-shattering call on my part that we should expect to see a pullback fairly soon. The IWM weekly chart. So we've been talking about the November highs. And in this case here, really, it goes back to the March highs of last year. November highs for the S&P 500 and the Dow. More the March highs for the Russell 2000. I think that we're going to see some stiff resistance at that 158 level. And we'll look to reopen our short position once we get up there. And we'll probably have an 8 handle on the TZA. And why did I close out that TZA position? It's because we closed out the week at the highs of the week on the IWM. The probability of us heading up higher is very strong, so why fight it? If we manage to close out next week above this resistance level at, let's call it 158.72, we're not going to short the IWM. We're not going to short it because we're above resistance. If we fail to close above this resistance level, well then, yeah, we'll look to enter the short side again. And I will be looking for the market's reaction to any trade announcement, any trade deal announcement with the Chinese. Because if we surge on that event, I will be looking to short into that strength because typically the knee-jerk reaction is the wrong reaction. We've seen that time and again when it comes down to events such as a Federal Reserve rate hike announcement. You'll get a knee-jerk reaction in one direction, and ultimately that's the wrong reaction, and you see the markets trade in the opposite direction within a short period of time. So in closing here, IWM, let's expect higher highs, and consistent with the other charts, very, very light volume, sequentially declining. So we're being pushed higher here on very, very light volume. The semis, a continuation breakout last week on light volume. They're probably heading higher up to the 107.50 level. Healthcare, an inside week last week. We did rally off the lows of the week. The uptrend is still intact, very light down volume. Oil, weekly basis. We pushed higher last week. We're at resistance, last seen back in November. And this area here is pretty stiff resistance because it was support back in March, February of last year. And we have a couple of moving averages here, the 200 period and the 20 period moving average at that level as well. Up volume was very light last week. So some headwinds for oil. And if there are headwinds for oil, you could expect some headwinds for energy as well. As a matter of fact, we closed off the highs of the week last week as we hit resistance. Volume was good, but a lot of it was selling. So warning flag on the track for oil and energy. The utilities, major breakout last week. Norris, I hope you're still long of the utilities. Nice breakout here. Nothing not to like, with the exception of volume. Volume's the only concern. Housing, a continuation breakout last week. The yields are helping housing. We closed above the 50-period moving average. Good stuff. Biotechs, a down week last week, along with healthcare. We retested the breakout point. I think right now, this sector is a watch. If we rally up and through 57.50, I would feel a lot more comfortable because we'll probably rally up to $65 per share on the BIB. The banks, we had broken out the prior week, and last week we pulled back and retested support. This is bullish stuff. Now, as with all of these charts today, volume was horrible last week. But net, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised to see a continuation move higher last week. We do have the 50-period moving average, which is declining. It acted as a declining ceiling last week. That doesn't mean that it can't be overcome, obviously. And if we rally up and through it, we'll probably head up to 28.50 thereabouts, maybe just 28, but 28.50 is more than likely a better price target. Gold, an up week last week, but we closed off the highs of the week. We're a bit extended here. Volume rose versus the prior week. I think that's the first time I'm saying that on this commentary, and I've gone over a lot of charts. So gold looking good. I just don't like the topping action here. And really, it's no shock. What you have here are these buyers back here. They're getting made whole. They want their money back. So we have overhead supply. But once we get through 1,377 the ounce on gold, it's going to be game on to the long side. We're going a lot higher on the price of gold, especially if the dollar continues to pull back. Let's talk positions. NUGT. Weekly chart, we're up over 8% last week, nearly 8.5% on this trade. We did close off the highs of the week. Our price target has been the 25 to 25.50 level where this black dotted line is. We came very close to it last week. Now, what I think is going to happen here is that we're going to get price action similar to what we had back here, where we had some overhead supply. It took a few weeks to barrel through, and that's fine. The longer the consolidation, the more valid the breakout. Meaning, if you have a multi-week consolidation and then you begin to break out, well, then you know that in all probability, your overhead supply is gone and the success of that breakout is very strong. Unlike back here, where we managed to recapture a support level and we rolled back over. So it's fine. If we consolidate sideways, good stuff. RSI looking good, Stokes looking good. Volume outstanding. That's definitely the first time I said that on this commentary. Silver, I wanted to add more last week, but we closed off the highs of the week, so I did not. RSI still looking good. Volume light, but relative to prior volume on down weeks, it was pretty good. But what matters is the moving average in red, and we were well below that level. Emerging markets, the EDC, we were up nearly 7% on this trade last week alone. I think that we are moving higher. The one concern I have here is the declining 50-period moving average, which is at current at $66.64. That's going to, which is currently at $88.64. That's going to act as a bit of a resistance level. But net, If the dollar breaks, I think emerging markets are going to go on a tear. So EDC looking good. Volume was light last week. EYES, watch stock. I spoke about this last week, and we broke out last week. So we may be looking to put this trade back on. All the indicators are looking solid. RSI, higher lows, and now breaking out. Stokes, double bottom setup, higher lows. But the breakout came on light volume. So EYES looking interesting for the coming week. I'm out of sequence here. Cal-Maine Foods. An up week, but $45 per share is acting as resistance. Nothing to do here. We'll remain long. I wouldn't want to go adding to this position until we close above $47 per share, because if we do that, in all probability, we are setting the stage for a breakout on Cal-Maine Foods above critical resistance at $49 per share. BHP Billiton, we're very close to our price target. We're up nearly 3% on this trade last week. Volume declined, so expect a trade alert early this week that we may be booking profits on BHP Billiton into resistance. And we'll look to add back once we clear that resistance level, monthly chart. So you can see this is why I am very concerned about this resistance level. It's been resistance and support many times in the past. It's got to be respected. If we manage to gap up next week and close out the week above this resistance level, we'll remain long. But absent that gap up, we're probably going to book some profits on BHP. Some additional watch stocks. PayPal weekly chart. We had broken out the prior week. Last week, we retested. I think we're moving higher here on PayPal. No overhead supply. So there's a lot of room to the upside here for PayPal. We're going to be looking to buy on Monday, assuming that we get a new weekly high. And of course, a stop right below last week's lows. Under Armour, it broke out the week prior to last. Last week, a retest of support. It appears as though we are probably going to move higher on Under Armour. Stoke RSI, higher low and breaking out. Volume a bit light. RSI, higher lows and breaking out. Stokes, just shy of the 50 level. So Under Armour looking very good for the new trading week. I didn't go over Bitcoin. Again, I'm out of sequence here, so I apologize. Bitcoin, we did open up a trade on. We had a move higher last week. We closed out the week just shy of the highs. We closed off the highs of the week, but this chart is very nice. The indicators are beautiful. The higher lows and breaking out. At least on RSI, they're breaking out. We have higher lows on Stokes. No breakout yet, but looking very, very good. And that is it for this week, folks. I'm going to keep this short in preparation for the launch. And please leave your feedback in the forum, negative, positive. It's all good. I do read it. It's very important to me. I do have developers on standby. The reason why we didn't launch on Friday is I was concerned about glitches appearing over the weekend and not having the necessary support. I've been assured that I will have the necessary support this week when we launch, so that way any glitches can get fixed promptly. So please, again, please leave a note in the forum if you should run across any issues. And everybody enjoy the remainder of your weekend, and I will talk to you soon. Be well.